And it's that turning that mental light off in their head of going, oh, I don't have to wait till 60 to retire. I don't have to wait to do this. It's fantastic when they realize that they can do it and step away. And it's probably the most enjoyable part of my job is when I can say, you can retire tomorrow. 25% of people in the US that are adults are child free, and that number continues to grow. We have sort of our own child-free bingo card where we get those questions because we get it from family all the time. It's like, it's usually the parents or grandparents asking, when are you going to have kids? Oh, well, you'd be such a great parent. Why aren't you doing this? And all of these things, especially if you've made that decision to say, I'm not going to have children, we hear this all the time. And that's what most advisors usually approach that with, is they go, oh, okay, you don't have kids yet, but you will. And that's just the normal assumption. And that's what has to change, and why we're out here trying to spread this message of, hey, talk to these people where they are. Don't make judgments.
What if everything the financial industry told you about building wealth was based on one assumption that you never signed up for? That you'd have kids, pass down money, and define your legacy by what happens after you're gone. My guest today, Scott Barnes, spent 25 years inside that old financial management system before he realized it was giving terrible advice to people just like him. Scott has more finance certifications than I can even mention, and now, as senior advisor at Childfree Trust and Childfree Wealth, he's rewriting the playbook for over 25% of American adults that the financial world has been flat out ignoring. Today, we're talking about spending your money while you're alive, retiring before 60, and building a legacy that you actually get to see. This one is going to challenge how you think about wealth, no matter where you're at. Enjoy. Well, Scott, you're a man with over 25 years traditional experience in the financial planning space. You know the ins and outs of building wealth for the now and for the long term. But not just that, you don't just go the traditional route, because you yourself found out that you weren't necessarily, in modern world's eyes, the traditional guy. So you sort of flipped financial planning to a way that is allowing more and more people, right? I don't know what the percentage is now of people that are deciding to be child free, right? To solo age or age with their partner, actually figure out how to, I don't think game the financial industry, but make it work for them versus only making it work in this like family space. And then not just that, I might go into like a legacy also of like what makes you qualified on that side and credible. And that's what gets me super excited to talk to you today.
Yeah. Yeah. So for myself, I've been in the industry, the financial services industry, for over 25 years. I've spent a lot of time working with clients, working with financial advisors, other financial advisors in my previous roles. And really, one of the things that I've noticed and has really stuck out to me as working in this traditional path of financial planning is that there are a lot of people that get left out. And when we look at people that are left out, I look at that child-free demographic. And in the US, 25% of people in the US that are adults are child-free. And that number continues to grow. And we really do a disservice to a lot of people by ignoring the fact that people are making this choice, or they might be in this situation via they just can't have children themselves. So it's really an underserved and under-noticed world out there. And many times we really look at this and think of it, we need to think of it differently and think of ways that we can help these people navigate their life and change the expectations that have been put on them over the years.
Interesting. Okay, so let's define this, because I wasn't really even aware of this market. Let's put it that way. You mentioned child free. There's another term you use of, maybe it's called solo aging. Define for us what is this versus maybe more traditionally in financial planning.
Yeah, sure. So child free, that's sort of the umbrella term we use, but we actually break it down into a couple of different areas. Really, there's two terms that we generally recognized for this world is child free and actually childless. Child free are typically people that have made the conscious decision not to have children. And that makes up of that 25% of the US population, about 20% of those folks are those people that have chosen not to have children. So they've consciously made that decision to say, I'm not planning to have children, not interested, whatever the reason may be. They've just decided they're not going to have children. That remaining 5% are those people that by circumstance, it might be medical reasons, it might be because they don't have a partner, it might be for any number of reasons. They might have wanted to have children, but they're unable to have children of their own. So it's one of those situations that we try to basically say, here's child free, here's childless. They sort of fit under this larger umbrella, but our approaches to each of those groups is completely different. Child free people, because they made that conscious decision, they've recognized and said, okay, I want to do something that's out of the norm. The childless people, we have to approach them with a different angle. And it's really, you have to be very sensitive to those folks. And there are many people that are very sensitive to having that conversation, and they don't want to be judged by the financial advisors, the people that they work with to help them build their wealth and build their knowledge in the financial world.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. So this child free is more a little bit of the choice, whereas this
Yes.
childless. And so you said that people are afraid to be judged, especially in this financial planning space and world. Like, I'm curious, why do you think this judgment comes about? Why are people assuming like you have to have kids and you have to be planning your financial life around leaving money for future dependents?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Again, since the majority of my career, I was working the sort of the traditional path. My wife and I were both child free, and I hadn't really even noticed it until I got later in life, and I've sort of learned about this whole child free world and what's going on. But for those people that are working with clients on a day to day basis, they follow what we call the sort of the typical life script. They go to college, get married, buy a house, have kids, then do all that fun stuff with kids and everything else. And then ultimately they build their wealth so they can retire, but then also leave a legacy to their children. And that's something that for the people that are child free, they're making a conscious decision to say, look, this is not the path I'm following. But when we're looking at it from that financial planning perspective, it completely changes how we need to look at their life and how we look at how they handle their finances. They may be in a situation where they can't make, I mean, because of their income or whatever, they may not make a ton of money, and they are living just a normal life, and they can't really have a ton of flexibility, but being child free means that they do have more flexibility than, say, somebody that has children.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like going to be a completely different strategy. And we'll go into this concept that you guys talk about. I think it's called die with a zero that we'll touch on here in a second. But
Yeah.
I'm curious, right? How did you realize, or when did you even realize that the entire financial planning industry is sort of built around this family first assumption?
It was when I first ran across actually the founder of our firm, Dr. Jay Zigmont. He started his own registered investment advisor, Childfree Wealth, about 5 years ago. It was in 2021. And I was just out there looking about, I followed a lot of different financial sort of people on LinkedIn and other spaces, and ran across his information and ran across his podcast and really got interested. It was one of those things that really made me stand up and go, huh, I've recognized I'm child free, didn't really have a term for it necessarily, but wanted to sort of find out. It's like, okay, how is this different for us? And as I continued to dig into his content, that's what made me realize that, wow, this is a huge area of just knowledge that most planners do not have. When we talk about, I'm a certified financial planner, as part of that curriculum that you do studying, there's no mention of not having children. And what do you do when you don't have children? And how does that impact the planning process for those people? And it was absolutely amazing after I'd gone through all this and then learned more, I was like, how are we not making this conscious decision of saying, hey, these are people that have different needs than the traditional the life script that most people follow. And that's not necessarily bad or good. It's just different. And we just need to make a conscious decision to say, hey, we're going to help serve these people and talk about things in a different way and not follow just sort of what we've always done when we're talking about financial planning.
Or that choose to talk about things now in a different way, right? This more customed approach versus I can't believe like traditionally they said even in education, there's no mention, there's no planning for individuals that are child free. Like how did that
Absolutely
gap
not.
even happen?
It's just one of those things. I'm not sure how it happened, but it's very interesting when we look at all the curriculum. There's no mention of it anywhere in these training processes. And having worked with different financial advisors from major firms that handle clients across the country, all the biggest firms that work with clients, there's no specific thing that they do for child-free clients. It's all pretty much following the normal script. And that's where we get into that conversation that's really frustrating for a lot of child-free people, is that many times these people will come in and meet with an advisor and they'll hear those words of like, oh, you don't have children. When are you planning to have children? Or, oh, well, you'll change your mind. That's something that's, I mean, we have sort of our own child-free bingo card where we get those questions because we get it from family all the time. It's like it's usually the parents or grandparents asking, when are you going to have kids? Oh, well, you'd be such a great parent. Why aren't you doing this? And all of these things, especially if you've made that decision to say, I'm not going to have children, we hear this all the time. And that's what most advisors usually approach that with, is they go, oh, okay, you don't have kids yet, but you will. And that's just the normal assumption. And that's what has to change, and why we're out here trying to spread this message of, hey, talk to talk to these people where they are. Don't make judgments. I mean, we personally don't even ask why they're child free. We don't ask them, are you child free because of choice or because of circumstance? We don't even ask that. If they want to bring that up to us when we're having that conversation, then they're willing. I'm happy to have that conversation with them, but we don't ask them. We just, in our intake process, our first thing is obviously they're coming to us because they're child free, but we just say, are you child free? And if they are, then we're like, great. You divulge what you want to divulge as we get going, but no judgment. We don't know why you're here, but we know you're child free, and that's good enough for us.
Absolutely. Now, this piece, there's a couple of things that you mentioned that I want to dive into.
Yeah.
You mentioned to talk to people where they are. I just want to note how wonderful that is. And Scott, I'm a big communications and marketing guy end of day. And I think this can like bleed over into so many different aspects of our life and businesses. Of don't go into a conversation assuming anything that somebody could be doing something, that somebody will do something. Talk to people where they are, right? And really just support them. Do you have any sort of memory or stories around this realization or the big difference that it's making of talking to people where they are versus just assuming, oh, when are you going to have kids, right? Like, why not? Like, how about just like supporting somebody?
Yeah, we do get that quite frequently, and one of the things that I see is when people start to divulge their stories as to why they are child free. I've had a couple of clients that, unfortunately, for circumstance or medical reasons, they've been unable to have children, and they opted not to adopt or do any of that. But it's a very emotional thing for them, and they really want acknowledgement that that's a loss for them in many ways. And we have to be able to recognize that for some people it is a loss that they haven't been able to have children. And there's obviously a lot of emotions and a lot of things that make it very difficult for them to talk about. And being able to sit with the client and ask them and have them open up about it, and giving them the space to do that without jumping into numbers and finance stuff that we always talk about with financial planning, giving them that space is huge. I mean, we approach, when we're doing financial planning with clients, we approach clients by saying, look, we plan for your life first and make you build your finances to fit that. And we want to know what your life is. We want to understand it. And we want to know where you're coming from. And we want to give you that space to be able to have those conversations. And all of those things ultimately impact their decision making process. And it's huge.
Yeah, it's absolutely huge. Nice, Scott. That's great that you all are truly just supporting individuals, right, in their lives versus, I think I mentioned earlier, like assuming what they quote unquote should be doing by the traditional path, traditional society. Tell us a little bit some of the differences potentially around the traditional route of financial planning, right? When it comes to individuals with families versus in the child free space. Like, what are some of the biggest things you recommend individuals do differently, like when it comes to their finances?
There are a couple of things. Probably the biggest is that idea that they want to leave money in some way, shape, or form to somebody. And that's even not a monolith. I mean, child free people are not a
Mm,
monolith either. There are plenty of
mm,
people that want to leave a legacy in some sort. That might be to nieces, nephews, other family members. It could be to friends. It could be to charities. But a lot of the child free people that we work with, they approach things from a different perspective. They want to enjoy the money that they have while they're alive. They want to give while they're alive. And their goal is not necessarily to die with a ton of money that they leave behind to somebody. And that's probably one of the biggest things. And that sort of breaks the financial planning world. A lot of the financial planning and advising world right now focuses on what they call assets under management. So they're paid based on the assets that a client has. So if they have $2 million, they're making like 0.75 or 1% on that, and they're billed that each year.
yeah.
If you are now spending down all of your money toward the end of your life, that means they're making less money. Their goal typically is, we're going to build up your assets. You can live your retirement and do those great things, but we're building assets so you can then leave that to the next generation. And it's not necessarily a conflict, but it's just something that, if you're trying to get your clients to actually spend their money while they're alive, that's something that most financial planners are not really thinking about. They're not built to do that. They're built to, I want to give you as much money as possible. I don't want you to die with zero. And even our goal is not to have people actually die literally with zero. We don't know when somebody's going to pass away. If you can tell me exactly the date and time you're going to pass, I can tell you exactly how to die with zero. But I can't do that. And so
Yeah.
we have to give you a buffer there. But it's the whole idea that we're not intending to leave behind millions of dollars to something or someone.
That is so interesting to me, honestly. So let's couple quick questions for you. You've mentioned the word legacy now a few times.
Mhm.
Define for me what that word means, especially in the financial planning industry.
Yeah, it is literally, instead of leaving assets behind when you pass away, it's living that now. So giving to your favorite charities as you go along. That could be just on an annual basis. It could be using stuff like donor advised funds. It could be doing other things like charitable remainder trust and different things like that. But it's all stuff while you're living, and you get to see the benefits of that and what those charities, or what they see and what they receive, and get to see their enjoyment of that. And that could be to family members, it could be to friends, it could be to any number of things. But we really love the idea of the person while they're alive seeing the benefits that that brings to those people or organizations that they love. And that's something that, while there is a lot of people and financial advisors that will coach their clients on making those contributions while they're alive, there still is more of a larger focus on when they pass, so they don't lose that money while they're alive. And that, to me, is a gap. And I feel like philanthropy would be much greater if people would do more giving while they're alive than rather than when they pass away.
Okay. So legacy and financial planning sense traditionally is the amount of money, finances that you leave behind after you pass away. But it sounds like you all with Child Free Trust is redefining or discussing legacy around, well, what are you doing today, right? What financially are you able to contribute to the world, to organizations today?
Correct. Yeah, and that's something that is generally, again, there are plenty of advisors that talk about giving today, but the focus has traditionally been on that, moving the money to the next generation. And that's one of the areas with child free trust that is different. And is in that child free trust falls into what we would call that estate planning type of world. And in all honesty, when we're looking at estate planning for child free people, I almost don't care what their will says. I mean, I'm happy that that does. The key things, and this is what makes child free a little bit different as well. The key documents in the U.S. for child free people are powers of attorney, so medical and financial power of attorney, and it's all, and all of that is about living. So, what happens to them when they become incapacitated? Those are the biggest concerns with people that have family or have children. Who are the people that will step in when those people, if those people become incapacitated? It's their kids. That's who steps in. I was that medical and financial power of attorney for my parents. That's the obvious, makes sense. But when you're child free, who does that for you? If there's a spouse, I mean, if you have a spouse, it'll usually be each other. But then what happens if you're both incapacitated at the same time? So having that backup there is something that is really key. And it's funny, I work with a lot of clients. The majority of clients that come to us on the Childfree Wealth side are in their between their 30s and 50s. Most of them will end up naming their own parents as the people that will be on those documents after them, and that's going the wrong direction. And, and it's, I mean, you usually want to name people that are either your contemporaries or like a brother or sister. But that's a big thing to ask somebody to do, to step in and handle your finances, to handle your medical decisions if you're unable to do so. So Child Free Trust, we created that to be able to answer that question of who makes those decisions when you can't. And what we have is a trust company that is back behind us that says, if you are unable to make decisions for yourself and you're in the hospital or whatever the situation may be, you're cognitively impaired or you have Alzheimer's, dementia, we'll step in and we'll manage your affairs for you as the medical and financial power of attorney.
Interesting. I like this sort of flip here where you're saying the traditional financial planning route, they're really recommending and pushing a will and testament, right? How everybody needs to be set up. Okay, well, after you pass away, what happens with everything? And this big old assumption that you're going to have kids to deal with everything, where now you're flipping the script for the child free market. They really need to have this power of attorney set up. And then the trust can manage it also. Right? What does that sort of management look like? What is the difference here of what a will and testament does and then versus what a power of attorney is going to do for individuals?
Yeah, the will and testament obviously is not put in place until somebody has passed away. So that's, I mean, they're gone. They then have what is usually a named executor in the will, so somebody that will handle the distribution of those assets until the estate is closed out. With the, and they would, a child free person still needs that as well, but for the powers of attorney, and again for people that are not child free, power of attorney is important as well. But they sort of have those natural built-in lines. They have that next of kin relationship that follows that. If for some reason they didn't have those documents in place, who's going to be contacted? They're going to contact their children. And then the children can then make decisions. They might be limited in what decisions they can make, but they'll be able to help make decisions for their parents. But the child-free person doesn't have that capability necessarily. They may have named somebody, but is that person going to be prepared? For example, myself, my brother, I do have him listed as one of my financial power of attorney on my documents after my wife, but he's 5 hours away. Is he going to be able to manage my household expenses and deal with all that from 5 hours away? He might be able to, but it's very difficult for people to be able to do that and manage somebody's affairs and step into that role. And we created Child Free Trust to give people what we call a professional fiduciary, because they are professional fiduciaries at a trust company that can step in and make these decisions. And when they're putting together all their documents with us, we ask them to get very explicit on what their wishes are if something were to happen. A lot of child-free people have pets. That's just as important to them as potentially any kids are. I mean, as well. I mean, it's our
Really?
pets are our children in many circumstances. So, what happens to the dog or the cat when we're no longer able to like make decisions or like physically be there to handle them? We asked the clients to put into what we call our care documents saying, this is the people that we want this animal to go to. This is the rescue shelter that we want them to go to. We even allow for pet trusts to be created that specifically make sure that that pet is cared for and is not just dumped into like unfortunately, like a kill shelter type of situation. So there are many things that we want to focus on and do that are different. And again, parented, I mean, people that have children, they should all be doing these things too. But the focus traditionally has been on what's left behind for those folks rather than what happens today.
Yeah. What an interesting difference for us to like be thinking about and realizing. And it's great that you all at Child Free Trust are helping individuals to set that up, right? With experienced people and experienced company that will handle your affairs if you pass away, instead of you just automatically putting that burden upon your brothers or sister or in a lot of cases, probably just like a best friend that if you don't have any other family members, just jotting them down on this piece of paper where it's actually going to be really difficult for them to do. And so, is that the primary service you'll sort of provide a child free trust? Or give me a little bit of some bullets for individuals that are listening that are thinking, I fall into this category, into this bucket. I'm not necessarily sure what I need help with. What all does Scott and Child Free Trust do that they could help me out with?
Sure. So, Child Free Trust, we basically allow them to create all of their documents in our system. So, all of those documents, the medical and financial power of attorney, executor, and will, and they also get a revocable living trust as part of their setup with us. Those documents can be updated at any time. There's no additional charge. Once you're a member of our service, you get unlimited updates to any of that information as much as you want. And then if something was to happen, we have that professional fiduciary that's back there that can step in and make those decisions for you when they can't. And what we do at Child Free Trust, as far as the like client facing side of things, is we encourage them to do a lot of that planning ahead of time. So doing the care planning side of things. So looking at things like, what do you want to happen if you did need to go into assisted living or a nursing home? Is there a particular place you want to go? Is there a particular hospital you want to make sure that you're at? Is there anything specific that you want us to handle? And all of that will hopefully get the client to make those decisions so we don't have to make that necessarily that decision for them. We'll follow whatever they ask us to do and make sure that it's actually implemented and done. But if they don't, then we're more than happy to step in and make those decisions. We'll contact somebody in their local community, a professional aging care manager or geriatric care manager, to help make those decisions of who are the best places and what are the best places to put those people into if they did need long-term care. So those are
Yeah.
the types of things that we really do for the clients. We
Mm.
can make those decisions when they can't and give them that peace of mind that their wishes are going to be followed. That's the one problem with even naming family, is that you may have specified something saying, I want this to happen, but the family member may not necessarily do that. That's one of the biggest
Yeah.
problems with like naming, especially medical power of attorney. Myself, I told my parents, I said, I do not want to be medical power of attorney. I will do the financial stuff. I'm happy. I'm great with that. Medical stuff, I didn't want to have that decision making. I didn't want to make that my decision. I wanted
Right.
my other family members to deal with that because I was just too emotionally tied up to it. And I
Of
didn't want
course.
to put myself in a position where I couldn't do something that they asked me to do.
Yeah. Makes perfect sense. And so Child Free Trust will handle all of that for you. And then tell me a little bit about Child Free Wealth, Child Free Insights that I think are like subsidiary
Yeah.
brands of you all as well. Like, what all are you doing there?
Yeah, Childfree Insights is sort of our parent organization that houses Childfree Wealth and Childfree Trust. Childfree Wealth, as I mentioned, is our registered investment advisor. We work exclusively with child-free clients around the country, all 50 states. And Childfree Trust also operates in all 50 states and DC. So we cover the whole United States. And we're really focused on the wealth side of just helping clients that are looking for that guidance that's not typical, and not something, again, when they find out about us, they're like, yeah, there are things that are different about my situation than what everybody else gets. The majority of the clients that we get are not the normal client. They've About 80% have never worked with a financial advisor before because they haven't heard their language being spoken. And that's why we're there. And the people that have worked with financial advisors before, when they get to us, they're like, yeah, they were telling me to do this and this and this, and it didn't make sense. And now you guys are saying, hey, this is maybe how it should work. And it's like the light bulb just sort of lights up and they're going, wow, I can't believe that I didn't realize that my situation was so much different than everybody else's.
Significantly different situation. So, Scott, I'm curious, right? When it comes to this financial wealth planning, right, through Job Free Wealth, what looks different in the strategy? If you can tell us a little bit specifics, I'm curious. Versus the individuals that are planning to have as much money left over when they die as possible to be able to give to their kids, versus individuals that want to benefit from as much money today. Like,
Yeah.
how does their investment strategy look different?
Yeah, the investment strategy usually is something that is different because many times they're looking to do things that other people haven't done. And when I say that, they are retiring earlier because they maybe have that flexibility, or they're taking sabbaticals, or they're doing things that, or just taking time in general. They might not take an official work sabbatical, but they decide, I'm not going to work for the next year. I'm going to travel, or I'm going to do something else, or pursue a hobby. So that's one of the things that's very different when we're working with these clients. And it's something that I love talking about because they get excited when they realize that, hey, I might be able to do this, and I might be able to do something that my parents would go, oh my gosh, what are you doing? You're quitting your job to do this. What are you going to do? You're not 65 yet. You're only 50. And what do they do? It's from the planning perspective. I mean, that usually does mean that we're going to be accessing, or we need funds that are going to be accessed before normal retirement age. And for in the U.S., if you're under age 59 and a half, there's a 10% penalty for drawing retirement assets out before you hit age 59 and a half. There are ways to get around that. There's something called the rule of 55. There's something called 72T, substantially equal periodic payments, that can help get around that. But it's also maybe redirecting. Everybody says just dump everything to your 401k, do Roth, everything, and all that. That might not be the direct way that we actually do their investments. We might say, well, if you're going to retire at 50, yeah, we could potentially access some of your retirement assets without penalties, but we want to build a brokerage account. That's a taxable brokerage account that you can access to build that bridge until you've hit age 59 and a half, or until you're forced to take money from your 401ks or IRAs. And it's not necessarily that the investment is different. It's really a location of where we are investing that's different. The investment, again, doing the different types of portfolios and stuff like that, it's all pretty much very similar. We take a very simple approach. We don't do a lot of aggressive stock picking or anything like that. We're using low-cost ETFs that cover the whole marketplace, and that's generally what we're recommending. But the actual locations and where they put stuff is really what we're focused on, to make sure that they're maximizing and giving themselves the flexibility that if they do want to step away, they can. We also really encourage, especially for partnered couples, the idea of the gardener and the rose. So what this is one of the people is sort of the gardener, and the other person maybe takes time off or does something, and they're basically, that gardener is sort of supporting that person while they're sort of doing something completely out of the norm. So again, it could be pursuing a passion project. It could be just taking additional time off. but giving them that capability or ability to think about things differently and potentially even switch off over time. One person's the gardener, one person's the rose. They do that for 3, 4, 5 years. It could be a year, whatever it may be, and then potentially switch off. So you give each other the ability to pursue those things that they've always wanted to pursue. And that's something that, again, is not the normal type of planning that you see from most financial planners. They're always concerned about, and I am concerned always too, about making sure they can live their life and do the things they want and are living within their means. But if we can give them that flexibility and show them that they're able to do these things, it's like they always think in their mind, okay, I need to hit this magical number to retire, 3 million, 5 million, whatever that might be. And a lot of times it can happen well before then. And it's all about the flexibility that their lives have created by being child free that maybe would allow them to do that. And it's that turning that mental light off in their head of going, oh, I don't have to wait till 60 to retire. I don't have to wait to do this. It's fantastic when they realize that they can do it and step away. And it's probably the most enjoyable part of my job is when I can say, you can retire tomorrow. I mean, there's no reason you can't. Yeah. And they're going, I thought I could retire for another 5 years. And I'm like, no, you can do it today. and they love it.
Right. Yeah, it's just got, so maybe somebody out there, let me ask you this, that is now realizing, okay, I don't need to wait until I'm 60 or 65 years old, right? Maybe I do want to retire. What's a strategy that you could recommend somebody look into that wants to maximize their finances today, that wants to start spending their money today instead of having to wait until 65? Like, what's a strategy to look into, whether it was maybe they should have looked into it a couple years ago or even today, so that they can really benefit as soon as possible?
Yeah, I briefly mentioned it before, but it's that idea of don't just save in retirement accounts. We do see a lot of clients that come to us that all they have is money in 401ks and IRAs. That's perfectly fine. That's reasonable. That's not unreasonable. But they've ignored the idea of investing in brokerage accounts. So taxable brokerage accounts where, yes, there are capital gains and dividends that you might have to pay taxes on while you're currently investing in those things. But that's one of the areas that we see the biggest gap. And that taxable brokerage account gives you the maximum flexibility. As I mentioned, if they only have retirement accounts, we can still figure out ways to get access to that money prior to age 59 and a half without the penalties, but it's a lot more restrictive. It's not as easy as it is if they have that brokerage account. So if they have the money, look at it from the perspective of do the 401k contributions, do the IRA contributions, but any additional money start funneling into brokerage accounts. And I think that gives them the max flexibility, because that's always the biggest concern for folks, is that when they retire at 50, 55, they can't get necessarily access without some issues that you have to sort of plan around. Or they also have to think about, oh, well, now I'm not on an employer health plan. What do I do? And now I have to buy insurance on the marketplace. So that's something they also have to think about. So again, there's a lot of aspects to this that are really important for those folks to think about. It's not just one thing. It's a multiple layers of things, but that's one of the things that we love doing. And I think part of the difference, most financial planners don't necessarily do that. There are plenty of new planners that are out there, or more recent planners that are out there really focusing on that younger market and also helping them retire sooner. And that's fantastic. But how does it also make a difference if you do have or don't have children? So,
yeah, absolutely. I want to start to wrap up around the idea of legacy, right? I noticed that your idea is that legacy is what you create while you live. Give me some examples about that, or like, what does that even mean? Like, legacy is what you're creating while you live.
Yeah, it really depends on the person, but what we see frequently for myself, I'll give you my example, is that we actively contribute to animal rescues and really are involved in those types of groups. That's one of the areas that we spend a lot of time in, and we try to give to them on a frequent basis. We do sustainer type of things where we're making monthly contributions because we want to make sure that we're having an impact every day and every month. with these organizations. We're getting we're more involved with them on a volunteer basis as well, and that's something that we encourage all of our clients to get into. And that is one of the benefits of being child free is you might have the time to be able to do that, to do additional volunteering. If you have children, it becomes much more difficult to be able to step in and provide those the ability of not just giving money but also giving time. And that's a huge difference for a lot of child-free people. And that's what I love about being able to help these child-free people build a legacy that's while they're alive and being involved in the things that they really believe in, and then working toward that. And also, another great example is I have plenty of people that want to be heavily involved in their nieces and nephews' lives. They have brothers and sisters that have kids. They want to be involved with them. Even if they chose to be child-free themselves, they want to be involved with their nieces and nephews. And they're doing things like they're setting up big trips that their parents might not have been able to afford to give them, but they're going someplace to another, another country to visit and do something that maybe they wouldn't have been able to done if it was just their parents that were in that position. But the child-free people can pay to bring them over or pay for the trip itself. And that's huge. And being able to do that and being a part of those families and being more active and present with them is something that I think a lot of people discount, because a lot of people do still have that urge to want to be with family. And if they can encourage or help their brothers and sisters and their children, they're thrilled to do that. It's just one of those things that I really encourage people. Don't wait until you die to make a difference, to have an impact. You can impact people's lives today. You can impact the organizations that you want today. And you don't have to wait to do that. And if you can do that now, do it so you get to see the benefits of it. Because it's obviously it benefits you from the emotional and just personal fulfillment side, but it obviously benefits them either from, again, the money side or from the participation side, where they're getting the benefit of having somebody that's actively engaged with their organization.
Amazing. Everybody that's listening, I really recommend go rewind back a minute here. Scott, that is so beautifully said around how legacy is really what we're creating today. And there's so many benefits to you and to everybody that you're affecting when you take action today to financially help somebody, to help somebody with your time, right? Whether that's an organization that you're donating your time or finances to, or people, other loved ones, right? We create legacy today, not just when we die, because little do we know, right? Our last day on earth could literally be today.
Yeah. Great point.
Great concept. Yeah. Scott, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. Anybody that is looking for more information, that wants to learn more, where's the best place for them to go to?
It'd be childfreeinsights.com. So just all one word, www.childfreeinsights.com. If you're from there, you'll be able to direct into our different organizations, Childfree Trust and Childfree Wealth, if you're interested in talking to us there. But would certainly appreciate anybody checking us out. Follow us on our Instagram, our Facebook, LinkedIn, everything. And also consume some of our podcasts. If you're child free and you've never thought about these things before, definitely check us out. There's a lot of great content that you can look at and a lot of great things you probably never thought of if you haven't been working with somebody that specializes in this space.
Wonderful. Scott, thanks again, my friend. I greatly appreciate it. Thanks for being here. If this conversation made you rethink what legacy actually means, do me a favor, share this episode with one person who needs to hear it. Send it to that friend who's been told they'll change their mind, or honestly, anyone who's ever felt like financial advice wasn't built for their life. Here's what I'm walking away with from Scott today. 1, legacy isn't what you leave behind when you die. It's what you create and give while you're still alive. 2, the entire financial planning industry has no curriculum, 0 for people without children. And that's a problem worth fixing. And 3, you don't have to wait until you're 65 to live the life you actually want. If you build with intention, that freedom can come way sooner than you think. Scott, thank you very much, my friend. And to everybody listening, go check out childfreeinsights.com.